First off, we're going to do the cervical vertebra. All these are vertebra. We're going to start off with the cervical. There are 7 cervical vertebra. This is the first one. The first one is called the atlas. And the atlas does not have a body and it does not have a spinous process. But the atlas does have these right here, these facets, superior articular facets, that will articulate with the occipital condyles of the occipital bone. And just like every other cervical vertebra, it will have the transverse foramen here. Now, the C2, or the second cervical vertebra, is this guy. This is called the axis. The axis has a den right here, the dens process. It also has a spinous process here. Now, the spinous process from C2 to C6 are bifid, meaning it has 2 heads. It also has transverse foramen, just like every other cervical vertebra. They will fit together like this. One sec. And so the dens will allow the atlas to rotate and allow the head to rotate as well via the transverse ligament. It'll move like this on the dens. Great. That was the C1 and C2. The atlas and the axis. Now, we're going to look at another cervical vertebra. This could be like the C3. With the other cervical vertebra, they do have the transverse foramen, and it does have a spinous process that is bifid. Remember, C2 through C6 are bifid, meaning they have 2 heads in the spinous process. This also has a body, a vertebral foramen, pedicles, and lamina right here on the vertebral arch. This is the vertebral arch. This also has superior articular facets and inferior articular facets, as well as transverse processes. The transverse processes are on the outside or more lateral to the transverse foramen. Now we're going to look at the C7. The C7 is just like every other cervical vertebra because it has a transverse foramen, except one thing. It does not have a bifid spinous process. It just has 1 head, not 2. But at the same time, just like all the others, it does have a transverse foramen. It has a body, vertebral foramen, pedicles, lamina. These are the superior articular facets. These are the inferior articular facets. They're broken off, but the transverse processes would be right here. Now we're going to look at a thoracic vertebra. The thoracic vertebra and the C7 are very, very similar, except for the fact, once again, of the transverse foramen. Every single cervical vertebra, C1 through C7, will have this, the transverse foramen. Now, there are 12 thoracic vertebra. When we look at the thoracic vertebra, we can see the body, the vertebral foramen. We have got these here, which are the transverse processes, the spinous process, superior articular facets, inferior articular facets, costal facet, demicostal facet, and then the transverse costal facet. Now, these guys right here are going to articulate with the ribs. Costal means rib. We got the costal facet, transverse costal facet, demicostal facet. And it will look much like this. That's how they all fit together. Great. Now we're going to look at the lumbar. There are 5 lumbar vertebrae. You have got the body, vertebral foramen, the pedicles here, and the lamina here on this vertebral arch. You've got the transverse process, spinous process, superior articular facets, and the inferior articular facets. Now, we're going to look at the sacral vertebra. They're all fused together. 5 of them are fused together. This is the anterior view. These ridges here are the transverse ridges. These are the anterior sacral foramina. These are the alas. They are the wings. We have the sacral promontory, which is this lip right here. We have these right here, which are the superior articular processes, and right here are the superior articular facets. The posterior view, we've got the posterior sacral foramina. And they are separate wholes because of this. They are separate wholes than these. Now, just to recap, we've got 7 cervical vertebra. We have got 12 thoracic vertebra. We have got 5 lumbar vertebra and 5 sacral vertebra. You can remember it this way. You eat breakfast at 7, you eat lunch at noon or 12, you eat dinner at 5, and you might eat your dessert at 5 as well. And we cannot forget about the little dude at the very end. This is your coccyx. Don't forget about him. And that'll do for all the vertebrae.